Hey, Geekscapists! How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. I'm Jonathan. I'm the host of Geekscape. And if this is your first Geekscape, let me tell you how it works. We talk movies, video games, comic books, podcasting, pop culture, all that stuff that's fit to print that we used to get beat up about. We used to get beat up for in middle school, high school. We talk about that stuff and celebrate it now because you know what? The geeks are on top. And it's never more apparent than right now at the multiplex. It feels like if you're not a Marvel movie, you don't have a place in theaters. But I like to bring stuff up. Here's a little thing that I want to tell you, Geekscapists. We got an amazing show. James Kochalka, who is an indie comic artist, punk rocker, writer. I first discovered him back in the mid late 90s because my first job was at a comic book store down by the University of Texas. And at my lunch break, I would leave the comic book store, of which I would read his comics, they just felt like a zine. They felt like that same culture of punk rock attitude. So we would carry this comic. I don't remember if it was Monkey versus Robot or what, but it just had that kind of aesthetic. Like if you see the Geekscape logo, it is like a Zap pop culture cool ray gun flying saucer aesthetic. So of course a book like Monkey versus Robot, James's book, was going to pop out. Anything with elves, this guy's a geek. You're going to meet him and you're going to say, hey, I got to go buy his book. He's got a new one coming out in September. I would walk down the street during my lunch break and I would pick up zines at the local punk rock store, pick up records, pick up CDs, and come back. And that was kind of my high school life, was comic books, movies, rock and roll. And Geekscape is very representative of that now. So I'm glad you're here with us. If you don't like any of those things, well, give it a shot. And remember, like, the geeks are now on top. That being said, there are some movies that I have seen that need your attention. This new George Miller movie, it made like $3 at the box office, and I think it's fantastic. It's got Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton in it. It's called 3,000 Years of Longing. Tilda Swinton plays she writes about books. She writes about fiction. She is a intellectual, but she's also really lonely, and she finds a bottle in a store in a market. And sure enough, there's a genie in it, Idris Elba, and it's George Miller. So get ready for the fantastical. I thought it was awesome, and I'm just telling you this because it's not getting love at the box office, and I think it's going to be one of those movies that in 5 years you're like, hey, where was this movie? Why didn't I hear about this? Why did MGM drop the ball on promoting this thing? I would love to see this thing on the big screen. Well, this is your chance. You should go see it in the big screen because it's fantastic and it's quite a ride. And if you want to go back and watch Spider-Man and all that stuff, you can do that too. There's going to be no shortage of those movies. But every now and then when somebody like George Miller makes a movie, he gave us Mad Max. He gave us Fury Road. And he also gave you Happy Feet and Babe. He almost gave you a Justice League movie too. The writer's strike stopped that one. Whenever one of these tour guys make a movie like that, I think you should celebrate it and go see it. So that's that. Geekscape's getting a little busy. I get married in October, so I'm really starting to pack the Geekscapes in. But y'all are the ones who are kind of getting the reward of that. We just had Jeff Fahey on the show. We talked about Lawnmower Man. If you didn't hear that, it's in the podcast feed right now. You should be subscribing to this podcast and sharing it with your friends. Jeff Fahey was here. Who do we have before that? Matt Milligan from Wheatus. They're having a little bit of a giant surge right now thanks to this TikTok trend for Teenage Dirtbag. And then next week, I've got a pretty damn good podcast sit down with Neil LaBute, who did In the Company of Men. I think he discovered Aaron Eckhart. They were BYU students together, and they did In the Company of Men. And then really uncomfortable stuff he makes sometimes, but his movies are great, and they're kind of must-sees. He has a voice that's pretty unique, and we talked about that. So Neil LaBute's coming up. That's a pre-recorded one, so you're going to want to subscribe to hear that one. Oh, and later this week, the president of LA Comic-Con is on the show to talk about some of the things we expect at LA Comic-Con in December. And you don't have to live in LA to be a part of that. We definitely talk about some of the things that they're doing on their website and in their podcast that you can celebrate even if you don't live in Los Angeles. Okay, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, but let's just go ahead and get the show started because That's what we're here for. Y'all want to talk to James? I want to talk to James. So let's start the show and get to it. Geekscape is strap up and let's go. All right, Geekscapists. Before the theme song, I said, strap yourselves up. I think the term is strap yourselves in. Strap yourselves up. You're going to be like, what kind of show is this? Kids, listen to this. I don't want you strapping anything up. Yeah, you can. Listen, we've been doing this show for 15 years. We've gone through a lot of stuff together, okay? Like, there's no judgment here. This is kind of crazy. Do y'all remember, like, early on, we had Big Yanks in New York from Long Island, and he was on the show. He was like on episode like 4. He had a daughter. I helped that daughter with her college essay over the summer. Can you believe that? The Geekscapists now have kids. The kids are now going to college, and this guy is still here talking about movies, video games, and comic books. I don't know if that's progress or confidence or just, I don't know, settling on who you are and what you do and just saying, hey, this is it. But one thing it does do is it gets me a chance to meet some really, really cool people. And this next person is somebody I've been a fan of for, I think we're talking 2 decades now, maybe 2.5. James Kochalka, I think I pronounced that right, but he's here right now to talk about his brand new book, Dragon Puncher Punches Back, which is the 3rd book in the Dragon Puncher series. And speaking of Geekscape is with kids, if you got kids, this is aimed at them, and it comes out September 20th. James, what's up, dog?
Hello.
Hey, you doing all right, man?
What is up, dog?
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that.
Sorry.
I was talking to Matt Kelly, and I said, you know what? Matt Kelly runs our network, and I'm always going through these push and pulls of like, hey, how do I make the show better? How to do it? I think ultimately, like, replace the host is the first thing you got to do, because the show goes as Jonathan goes, and sometimes I just want to get on here and be like, I don't want to talk about Marvel and DC and video games. I just want to be like, what up with you? Be like, yo, what's that? So we're gonna do this. And James,
we can talk about comics and anything. Rock and roll and anything. When I was a kid, I knew that my whole life was going to be comics and rock and roll. I didn't think I'd make a living at it.
How did you know that? Like, do you remember that first instance where you were like, this gets my blood going a little faster?
I started drawing comics really young elementary school. I don't know. I never really. I do remember like my aunts and uncles saying stuff like, "Do you think you're going to be a cartoonist when you grow up?" And I'd be like, "What do you mean? I'm a cartoonist now." But they meant like, as a job.
Yeah.
So I was in, not even considering that maybe it could be a job. I was just in.
But you grew up in Vermont as well?
Yeah.
So like, what do you do when you're in Vermont? And I'm guessing this is like the 80s going into the early 90s. This is maybe late 70s, but you're a teenager in the 80s, and like the stuff that's going on, that's how New York was New York kind of burned out by that point. It had like the whole CBGB's thing kind of like just turned dirty by that point, and there wasn't anything there.
I think it was still there. I mean, my band eventually played there before they shut down. No,
I remember
Blondie wasn't still playing there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the Ramones, Blondie, Talking Heads, like that was long past, and it feels like late 80s. You're just stuck in like Frank Miller's Daredevil. That's it. Like, in New York.
So for comic books in in Springfield, Vermont, where I grew up,
Yeah.
the only thing you had was like the corner store with its like little rack, and be
The
like,
spinner rack, yeah.
yeah, the spinner rack, and you couldn't even get like 2 issues of something in a row unless you like watched it like a hawk, you know. So we would, my friends and I would take a car down to Holyoke, Massachusetts, to their gigantic mall. It was like a mile long and like 3 stories high, and they had a comic book store. And I buy Flaming Carrot there.
Oh my God, how great was that comic?
Yeah, so good, so good.
Flaming Carrot, and it's Flaming Carrot was like the one that I always thought would cash in, but they made the Mystery Men movie, and you're like, oh, but it
was great. The Mystery Men movie is great.
Yeah, our friend Doug Jones is in that. He's super young in it. I remember seeing the Mystery Men movie and being like, but I want Flaming Carrot. In the same way that like Unrealistic Jonathan wanted like a milk and cheese cartoon. And it's like, Jonathan, they're running around being complete a-holes and murdering people. You know, like all that Evan Dorkin stuff. When people ask me like what superhero movie would you want to make, it's Mike Allred's Madman. Like I don't know if any of this stuff works on a commercial level, and it's sadly like Mystery Men didn't really work on a commercial level.
No, not really on a commercial.
Was it too early? Was it too early?
It was a little too early. Yeah, I think it was. Like people were like, "Huh, okay."
So Flaming Carrot,
like, yeah, just like I don't know what people thought it was. It wasn't superheroes like they thought, but also it was. They just weren't ready.
I feel like that movie still came out like in the vicinity of Batman and Robin, and at that point, people were like, "We're done. Pack it in. No more of this. We tried." Because it was like the early '90s where, like, I was a kid and everybody's feeding off the love of the Tim Burton Batman, and that you get away with a couple. You get to make a Dick Tracy. You get to make, the Ninja Turtle sequels. The first one's good. Maybe I was just a kid.
The first Ninja Turtle movie was really good, and then the second one, the second one, it wasn't that first one. That's for sure.
It wasn't that first one, and then by the third one, it's like, oh boy. And so by the time like a Mystery Men came out, it just seemed like, oh. But then you got like John Arcudi. He and Doug Mankey's like The Mask got a really good movie, I thought, and that one worked. But it wasn't what we're dealing with now. Now it feels like everybody in Hollywood's just like, is it based on a comic? Then we're not interested. We're not interested. It's hard to make anything that's not. Is it based on a comic? And as I said in the opening, like George Miller has this awesome movie out that's beautiful and fantastic and goes in some awesome places and has 2 amazing actors in it. Nobody's seeing it.
I was very, very, very excited to see it, and then I sort of missed that it had come out. So I guess I better get down there tomorrow.
I don't think it's going to be in the theaters next weekend.
No, probably not.
I honestly don't. It's like and then theaters are doing this thing. I don't know if this has reached you, James. You got kids, so maybe this is a good deal. It's like movie theater day on Saturday nationally. So like,
I don't know about that.
Regal and Cinemark are all doing $3 tickets. Even for the 4DX thing that puts you in a seat and like throws mist in your face and like shakes you. I don't want to pay for that. but I mean, that sounds like a cheap day at the theater. So maybe I'll catch up on some of these that maybe didn't get the good reviews. But if you haven't seen this George Miller movie, go see it. So James, was I right in thinking that like your artwork and sort of like the beginning of your career, it's like, I don't want to wrap you up in like zine culture, but
absolutely. 100%. I mean, I was making homemade photocopied mini comics. And
that's a punk rock thing.
Yeah. At the time, there were a lot of comics done that way, but there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of just zines about, anything.
And what year was this, do you think? I'm trying to place you. Like, is this like the last?
Well, I started making zines. I started making zines before it was a big nationwide thing.
Sure.
But I made my mark probably around 93 to 95. I think it was like 95 or 96. My first like professionally published books started to come out.
so you weren't writing like the wave had long since gone. The Eastman and Laird like black and white comics wave was like long gone
Yeah,
at
it was
that
gone.
point.
Yeah, I mean
was gone.
Yeah.
So,
I had a
yeah,
friend in high school, so probably like 1984 or something like that, who did like 2 or 3 issues of his black and white comic, which he sold through the direct market, and would sell like 12,000 copies of each issue. Yeah,
you can't sell that many.
And he's like, and he was, not a name at all.
You hear about this stuff. Yesterday, I went to a concert Saturday, and I went on the fly. I went to meet some people at lunch. I looked up and I was like, oh, there's a concert going on during the day. I'm going to go check it out. And that turned into a second concert later that night. And I left the house in like an ElfQuest shirt and flip-flops. And so I'm walking around to these concerts. Everybody's like really dressed to go to these concerts. And Jonathan's in shorts, flip-flops, and an ElfQuest shirt. Nobody knows. And somebody's like, what is that? And I think it's that same kind of atmosphere of like these 70s to 80s, kind of gone by the early 90s. The ElfQuest books, but I cannot even fathom. You can't. I mean, what does Spider-Man sell now? 100,000 copies? I can't even fathom an indie creator selling 12,000 copies any day, much less like. I mean, in the 80s,
no, it's pretty common for a book to sell under 1,000 copies.
Wow.
So I know some books through Diamond might get like 200. It was even in the 90s. It was a lot more than that. I'm not everybody. Obviously, some people.
Of course. Yeah. There are the image creators, right? Like when you think about it, like the Rob Liefelds and Todd McFarlanes were going crazy around that time. How did you? I mean, really, what I'm asking, James, is like, how did you crack through? Like, what do you think it was that cracked through in 93, 94? Really, when they started Image and everybody's looking for this kind of flash and cool style and this and that, why do you think you're more minimal? If I can say that, I don't want to offend, but like you're more, does that make sense? Like
you can almost just tell me it sucked, and I probably wouldn't be offended.
No, because there's like the Sam Keith stuff that had like a strong cartoon style to it, right? Like the Max, if y'all are familiar with that off of MTV, like that stuff all had like a great distinct style. And I think that when everybody's trying to, no offense to Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane, they're great with what they did, Mark Silvestri, those Image guys, but when everybody's doing that, I think a lot of us gravitated towards the other, like the other.
Yeah, I mean, the way you break in, the way I broke in, the way a lot of people break in is just by being a little different than everybody else. My stuff looked different.
Yeah. I'm going to share a picture of Monkey versus Robot right here, or actually, I'll share a Dragon Puncher picture. Yeah, and what did you
and society has been remade from then till now. So it's my stuff is probably less different looking now than it was then because for instance, like Pendleton Ward, Adventure Time. He used to write me letters when he was a kid, like in college.
That's so cool.
So I feel like, I've had this gigantic contribution to American culture that people might not know, but I'm proud of. In any case,
as you should be. Like that Adventure Time's massive. But you're right. Like when you look at something like a Monkey versus Robot, there's absolutely the DNA of your stuff in Adventure Time.
Yeah, for sure.
But, I mean, when the Adult Swim stuff starts coming out, and a lot of it is kind of built on that style.
Oh, I remember one time this. I posted a comic online or something, and someone was like, "Oh, this just looks like that same stupid stuff that's been in Vice magazine." And I was like, "Well, I did have my strips in the original Vice magazine." Before it went national. So maybe there's a reason why all the strips in why my strip looks like all the strips in Vice magazine, because every single thing in Vice magazine, is my child.
What was the hardest part about this turn? I know
What's the hardest part of what
yeah,
about what?
what was the hardest part of this turn? I'm still trying to get your origin story. Like 93, 94.
It wasn't hard.
Yeah.
Like breaking into comics,
Yeah.
it was easy. Oh my God, it was so easy. I can't even believe it. It was so easy. I started making so I drew comics my whole life, and I would make zines and just like give them or sell them to my friends and stuff like that. And then I realized that people all across the country were doing it. So then I started like trading zines with other people around the country. And then from that, I ended up getting written about a little bit. And then stores would call me and say, hey, can we stock it? So I wasn't even like going out trying to find stores, but they'd call me and say, they'd track me down and say, we'd like to do this. Anyhow, so from when I first started putting zines out till when I was able to quit my job as a waiter and be a full-time cartoonist was like literally like 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
It was, and then I've just done it ever since. So that would have been like 97 or 98. I think I went full-time.
And it never like contracted, right? Like when you start to see like stories of like Marvel having to sell their their filing cabinets in the late 90s because they're facing another chapter 11 or something like that. Like did you ever have a hard time, but did things ever start to kind of collapse? Did you have
they collapse and expand all the time.
Right.
Like if you're just talking like money, yeah, there's some years where I make very little, and some where I'm very flush. So just the way
how do you survive that stuff?
Well, my wife has a job too. So I could probably make nothing and still be all right.
Whoa. Don't tell the fans that. All right? Like, wait.
No,
retiring.
Just gonna retire. No.
How would you describe your style? And where did it come from, do you think? Where do you think were the influences on you? We talked about how you influence others. Like, what do you think were the influences on you?
Well, my dad was an old newspaper man. He was like 50 when I was born. He was a newspaper editor, and he really liked the old classic comic strips. So I read all the classics like Pogo and of course Peanuts and Crazy Cat and Little Abner, and like just anything he showed me, I'd read it. So that was probably my and the comics that I could get on the spinner rack, like Casper the Friendly Ghost and Richie Rich and Hot Stuff, all those Harvey comics. I would go back and forth on the superhero comics. I really, really liked Incredible Hulk when I was little. And then one day I was looking at my Incredible Hulk comics and realized he was a monster. And then I was so terrified I had to give away all my Hulk comics. And then I didn't read really superhero comics again for quite a while, until then discovered like a few towns over, I think in New Hampshire, actually, there was a used comic book store. And they had, hundreds and hundreds of like Silver Age comics. So I could go in and get like DC superhero comics from the 60s, which are amazing. Oh my God, I love those so much. And I was like, well, like, they didn't scare me as much as the Marvel comics did. And then, eventually I came around to it all.
Why do you think that is? Because obviously, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, like Marvel, Marvel.
Well, the Silver Age, the 60s DC, has a real playful, juvenile quality. And I think in some of the Marvel stuff, like it really seemed like people were fighting for their very lives, And
when you think about the decade that Marvel came up in, maybe they were aimed mostly at college kids.
Yeah, I think so.
People who were literally fighting for their lives. When you think of the
Right.
level of civil unrest going on in the 60s when those things came out, and the fact that every character is made out of radiation, like post-nuclear war fears or current nuclear war, Cold War fears, like I can see how that's a lot for a kid to be like, oh, here's a comic book. It's a lot, it has a lot of bright colors, but it also reminds you that you're going to die.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that's why I found them terrifying.
Yeah, by the way, hey kid, here's $1. Go entertain yourself out of the spinner rack and be reminded of your own mortality. Hey, this radiation you can't even see is going to make your hair fall out and die, and you're going to kill all your loved
ones. Oh my God, I would worry about that kind of stuff for sure.
Absolutely. I can see that. And I can see why in like a darker decade like the 80s, a lot of those things started popping up, and you start to get like the Frank Miller and the, we just watched all the Sandman stuff on Netflix, and you start to get a little bit more of the darker stuff again. But the 60s are great. That stuff is fun. Like, what if Jimmy Olsen had Superman's powers?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Or Jimmy Olsen was black, grows a gigantic brain,
right?
Or like Robin will die and then he'll come back to life.
Or all the different types of kryptonites that just make Superman do whatever the hell they
want. Oh yeah. They're amazing.
This is rubber.
What's it? What's the one that has a different random effect on Superman every time?
I have no idea. Like a gold kryptonite or something like that.
Gold kryptonite, I think, will take away his powers.
Okay. And then, like
red kryptonite. That's the one. That's the one that makes him do something. One? That's the random one, I think. Because I remember an issue where Superman got this giant ant head.
What the fuck? Why?
And then they gave him a new power. Now he could communicate with ants.
Listen, DC, I know that like HBO Max is giving you some trouble with like what you want to do, the direction you want to go in. I think we just solved it. You gotta have the ant head Superman. And as a kid, you're like, this is amazing. As an adult, you're like, man, those DC kids are on drugs, man. Those kids making those comics are all on drugs. James, like, what do you think? Like, this love that your father had for the Sunday Funnies. My father's the same way with the Sunday Funnies. We would get like the cast off pages, right, from the newspaper, and it's like, here, entertain yourself, kids. And you'd read those Sunday Funnies. Having a father that was that many decades older than you, was there were the comics like, did they have an increased value in connecting with somebody who generationally was pretty far removed? Or
I don't know. I think he maybe he didn't feel generationally far removed to me.
That's cool.
Just felt like normal dad.
So the two of you all just reading comics, and then when you started drawing, and the style is still bright. Whereas, what were your peers doing at the time? Were they all trying to like refine themselves into the more naturalistic, realistic styles, and you're kind of staying as a sort of cartoonist? And I don't, again.
Okay, well, if you're talking about like my peers, like in high school, they all drew like me, because I had a strong influence on them. I started this comic in high school called Anarchy Today, and then I would recruit kids. It was like an anthology comic, and I would recruit kids to draw for it. A lot of kids who didn't draw at all, or kids that did draw maybe some other way. I'd make them draw comics.
But that goes in line with being a comic book called Anarchy Today, right?
Yeah,
it's like it's about the noise, right?
Yeah, it's all about
different styles. And tell me about that. Like, what was the story there? Did they start to draw like you?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, they all started to draw like me. I started another really weird, and a lot of it was pretty crass stuff. I was given a talk. I was given a talk at a high school earlier in the spring, and I was like, I'll show them stuff from Anarchy Today. And I looked through it, I could like find one strip that I thought I could maybe get away with showing. It only had a little bit of murder in it.
we were just angry. Angry equated like I think loud was our solution for being angry, not actually pondering what we're going through or our feelings or our existence. We were just like, I'm
being loud.
By being loud as possible. Is that
so? I invented this other thing in high school too. So maybe that wasn't enough. So we found another way to do it all anonymously. Well, okay. So the school had this like writing thing where everyone was supposed to write in their English class and make like a little book, and then they'd put it in the library, and then everybody was supposed to go in for a couple hours a day and read everyone else's books and like write reviews of it. Very typical, good.
And that was anonymous? You didn't know who
Well, no, that wasn't anonymous.
Okay.
But then I started writing anonymous stories and putting them in the pile. And then soon everybody was writing anonymous stories and putting them in the pile. Like everybody was, so they did their assigned story, right? Whatever. And then everybody wrote like 5, 6, 7, 8 other books and put them in there. And it was all crazy stuff. Some kids would write crazy pornography about their favorite, like pop stars. People just write like just the craziest stuff. And we just slip it in there and everyone read it and go like, oh my God. And then write their reviews about the crazy stuff that they had found in the pile. So I made the whole high school write like mad, like everybody writing their asses off because I turned it into the most fun thing that anybody could possibly do.
That sounds like what kids do now, but it's like a TikTok, right? Like kids are all doing the back and forth on the TikTok or the social media. You started that in a prose, literary, or drawn form in high school. Meanwhile, the teachers are probably like, how do we get these kids to write? And all you really had to do was have them talk trash in a way, right? Like just kind of make noise.
And it wasn't all garbage. People wrote really good things. Yeah.
That's incredible. When did you get into the music? At the same time, right? Just being loud?
Yeah. It was in high school. My first band started. And then I had a great band in college called Jazz in Hell. But it's like jazzing, but with a no G and the apostrophe.
like
so JAZZIN apostrophe hell.
Right. Like busting a move, but you're jazzing.
Yeah, we're jazzing hell.
I was gonna get jazzed tonight.
Yeah.
And
so that band was me on vocals. Okay. This other friend of mine on saxophone, and then another friend on Casio keyboard, and then later we brought in this weird hippie guy. Just joined the band against our will. What? He joined our band against our will.
How does that even happen?
He just showed up and started playing with us. He was like, well, so at one of the shows afterwards, a bunch of frat boys wanted to beat me up.
Why?
And so, well, I sang a song about Elvis that they thought disrespected Elvis.
What was it? Like, why?
Why? I don't know.
Why. I mean, what did you say about Elvis that Elvis wasn't like hadn't already done to himself?
No, I didn't do it. It's just a song, It's just a silly little song about Elvis, and I took my pants off.
Oh man, this is making me... That's where you went wrong, James. They were like, "What are these weird feelings?"
So anyhow, so this guy
tell us their masculinity. Now they're gonna beat you up.
This guy Hilton, who was at the show, he was like, "I'm gonna have James's back from now on." So he welded. He didn't know how to play bass, but he made a bass guitar out of solid steel. He just welded these bars of steel together. And then he was like, anybody messes with you at any shows, I'll just beat him with the bass. And I was like, okay, I guess this guy's in the band now.
That bass isn't, but it wasn't an instrument. That was a weapon.
And he didn't really know how to play bass. So
Well, you need a bass first.
He played the bass with a drumstick. He'd just beat the strings with a drumstick, and move his hand up and down. And so we mixed that in with the Casio keyboard and saxophone.
Yeah. You still talk to Hilton?
No, I haven't talked to him in a long time. He's a good guy, though. Yeah, maybe made him sound scary, but he was really a sweet guy.
Well, there was a level of altruism that was going down.
He wasn't like
great.
He was just a skinny hippie college kid. He wasn't like a tough guy.
Sure.
But he just wanted to protect me.
I just love that you took your pants off and suddenly these dudes' masculinity was challenged. So they're like, we got to reestablish that. We got to beat this guy up to reestablish our.
I don't even think I showed anything. I think I was still like, in my boxers or whatever, but it was just too much for them. Yeah.
Yeah, these dudes who take football showers together and like, hey man, what's going on? Hey, borrow your shampoo. Like the second you get down to your boxers, you're like, that tears it. Time to die, punk rocker. And we're gonna blame the fact that you made fun of Elvis. Everybody makes fun of Elvis. Elvis by that time he went out badly. Like poor Elvis. Like
I mean that's what the song was. I think the song was actually written by the lyrics are actually written by another friend of mine. But the lyrics were it was like thanking Elvis for the gift that he gave mankind, because every drug that he consumed was one less on the street for you.
You know what?
He really saved a lot of people from a terrible end.
It is a perspective, and I think that perspective is fun. I mean, yeah, that I can see somebody thinking that was a little mean spirited, but I think what I like about you is you always had this like, sometimes you take the comic and you have to turn it sideways. Like the perspective was not traditional, and I think earlier when I was fumbling through my words, being like, hey, I didn't necessarily want the Marvel or Image stuff at that time, right? Like when the Image guys came out, and you remember that. It was the stuff they were doing at Marvel, except Sam Keith, right? Sam Keith was the one doing the Max and with the weird claws, and then all of a sudden you get on Liquid Television with MTV, which is obviously a precursor to some of the Adult Swim stuff. And you watch it because it's like, oh, it's the Max, and you got like Beavis and Butthead and stuff, all that alternative art stuff. And I don't think you're the I mean, how much did like the R. Crumb and the earlier stuff? That's all 70s stuff and 80s stuff. And so my fascination with you is that you're sandwiched between the Eastman and Lairds of the world and that indie comic boom of the late 80s. But before, it was Hollywood being like, you got any more of these blockbusters? We got to make a Mystery Men. Like you just kind of came in there, yet your influence is solidly there just in time for the Adventure Times and the Adult Swims and all of that stuff. And Geekscape is, if you've never heard of James Kochalka, that's why when you were solicited to the show, I said, absolutely, 100%, A+, we got to have him on the show because...
Well, I think your Geekscape listeners would absolutely love Monkey versus Robot. And we do have a big collection of that has the original first two graphic novels. Mm-hmm. So Monkey versus Robot and Monkey versus Robot and the Crystal of Power. And then it has a whole third graphic novel that I drew just for the collection.
Oh, wow. That goes out through IDW or Top Shelf?
Top Shelf.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and what you're showing here is actually the Monkey versus Robot music album.
I know.
Which came first. So first it was a song, and then the album, and then the graphic novel series.
Why that order? It's just music is more immediate, or your resources?
Well, I was just like I was at a party. It was like an after hours party. So
you piss anybody else there?
No. Okay. Well,
just checking if I gotta get the metal base together.
I'm just like a bull in the china shop in your life. Probably.
You only live once, James. It's okay.
I know I really try to be a good person, but I do cause accidental mayhem. But at this party, so there was this band from New York City, Ultra B-Day. they're Japanese guys living in New York or who emigrated, and then they would come up to Burlington, Vermont to play. I think it's hard to remember. It's a long time ago. Sure. Anyhow, they were at the party, and so they had played a show earlier in the night. You know, the clubs shut down at like 1 o'clock, and then we all moved over to someone who had a big house, and so all, you know, like half the people at the party were musicians, so we just started jamming in the
living room,
right? In the living room, right? Yeah. And so they were just playing like, you know, some random riff, and I just started singing the song Monkey versus Robot 2. I just invented it on the spot.
Sure.
So then I had to recreate it with my band later.
It went over. It was a hit.
Yeah, no, it was like, this is amazing. Like Monkey versus Robot. It's just like, that's the best idea. And so basically,
immediately knows the words, right?
What's that? I know.
Everybody knows the words. Like everybody gets it. It's Monkey versus
Robot. Yeah. It's about the eternal struggle of man versus machine,
nature versus technology. It all
makes sense. Nature versus technology, right? So then I had that title, and I was like, the title is just too good for just. I got to draw a comic too. Mm-hmm. So
that's incredible.
That's happened more than once. For instance, the new book, Dragon Puncher Punches Back. So the first Dragon Puncher book, I first wrote Dragon Puncher as a song to entertain my son. He was probably like 3 years old, and I wrote this song. It goes, I am the dragon puncher, punching I will go. If you are a dragon, I will punch you in the nose. I am the dragon puncher, you know I ain't no liar. The dragon tried to burn me, but I ain't scared of the fire, 'cause I know the secret of infinite lives. I know the secret, so I never die. Anyway, I wrote that song like while we were, you know, play fighting, because we used to love to wrestle and fight, like anyhow. So then I did the comic, and so that's the field behind our house. This little brown fuzzy monster, that's my son Eli. Those pictures were probably taken when he was 3.
And Geekscape is, if you're just listening to this on the audio podcast, you got to pick up this book, Dragon Puncher, or pick up any of the Dragon Puncher books. The third one.
Yeah, I'll describe how it looks. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the figures are drawn, and the two main characters are a cat in a robot battle suit, and a little kid who is in a fuzzy monster suit, fuzzy monster pajamas kind of thing. And then the backgrounds are photographs, and the characters' faces are photographs. So the cat in the robot battle suit is my cat Spandy, and I took a lot of photos of Spandy's face. And the little kid in the fuzzy monster suit is my son Eli, and I took lots of pictures of his face. I'd say like, look left and look scared, or look straight ahead and look angry. No, angrier. Directed him like that.
Do the photos come first or the artwork comes first?
I would draw I drew the book.
Okay.
Like as a rough draft, just pencil drawings. And I would read it to him as like a bedtime story. And then I went through and took all the face photos. So I knew from my rough sketches, like the character would have to be looking up at this other character or down at this whatever, So then I knew like all the directions I had to give him.
And as your kids get older, you have 2 kids now?
Yeah.
And as they've gotten older, they've appeared in the Dragon Puncher books that are aimed at kids too. So if you're listening to this and you're a parent, the Dragon Puncher series, and I like the Johnny Boo stuff too. Like those things, you do stuff that's
I have a lot of great books for kids.
Great kid stuff. And I think that's awesome. And like all the punk rockers that we grew up with, they all did their kids albums, they all do their stuff. I think that's a natural progression for storytellers who become dads, and I think it's beautiful. And this book
It is
has
beautiful.
your kids in it. I think it's awesome.
So they've
Yeah,
gotten
I think it's
really
great.
big now, though. Eli, when I drew,
Yeah, how old are your kids now? They're in their they're like
no,
their late
not that, not
teens.
quite that. Yeah, yeah. Eli just turned 19.
Yeah,
And Oliver is just about to turn 15.
but you still use the original photos of them as children, correct?
Yeah. So I debated this. So I drew the book, this most recent book, Dragon Puncher Punches Back. Last September, I drew it. So Eli had just gone off to college. So we had talked during the summer about taking new photos of him for the book. And we just, got really busy. He was working as a dishwasher, trying to, earn some money. Sure. and hanging out with friends and stuff that he wasn't going to see again for a long time. And then suddenly it was the night before he was going to leave. Oh, and God. He's like, well, let's take the photos, Dad. Let's do it. Let's do it right now. And I was like, we don't need another stressful deadline on your last night. I'll just use the pictures we took for the last book.
Which was 10 years earlier?
Yeah, it was like 10 years earlier. Yeah. And actually that turned out to be really great because, I missed him while he was gone. And I was able to think about like our whole, this whole life that we had together, when he was a little kid, and now he's big, and now he's moved on. He's off to school. So it was like drawing Dragon Puncher Punches Back was a way to just reminisce and enjoy that time that I had spent with him when he was little, that I'll, can never recapture again.
How emotional did you get making that book? I mean, I feel like you're getting emotional talking about this now, and it's a beautiful thing. One of my favorite memories was my father driving me to college, and that week we spent driving to the Northeast to drop me off, and to hear you talk about this is beautiful, because if anything, Geekscape is, especially y'all who are parents and interested in getting a book for your kids, I think that you could just hear in James's voice that this book is a testament to that, and ultimately this is a kid's book, and
yes,
and maybe having like a 19-year-old 18-year-old kid, maybe that's a different book.
Yeah, maybe I still might do it for for a future one, but for this one there hadn't been a Dragon Puncher book in 10 years, and
gotta reset the palette.
Yeah, like a lot of people don't know what it is, right? Like Dragon Puncher Punches Back works very well as your first Dragon Puncher book. You don't have to have read the others at all. Also, I draw like 1,000 times better now. So,
I mean, could that be a thing that Eli takes part in later on, is a version of this where his character ends up in a time warp and you use both current
that would be awesome. Yeah, sure.
Photos?
Yeah. Could use both. I mean, absolutely.
Because I can only imagine, sadly, the cat's no longer with us, right?
The cat has died. That's true. I thought of replacing the cat because I have some new cats. But so like if I do the older, I could do the older Eli and maybe one of the new cats. I don't know. So you're showing for the people that are just listening, you're showing some of the pages of the new book, which drive me absolutely insane because of this giant watermark on them. Because I guess IDW was afraid you would pirate the book if they sent it to you. So there's like this watermark that takes up like 1/3 of the whole page. Oh well.
I know. That being said, I still enjoyed it, and I think that I enjoyed it for the reasons that, like, you and I are similar age, and we've grown up with comics, we've grown up with families, and if anything, this stuff is a celebration of this stuff. And I can only imagine. I mean, I know your biography. I see your kids on the insert page on the in the opening.
Oh yeah, on the Indicia page.
I know your kids aren't that the age that they are in these photographs anymore, but seeing the book and seeing your kids at this age, this is like a great way to just make a photo album with your kids. It's like a pretty creative way to make a photo album with your kids. And
so this is what I was thinking today. If they, someday they have their own kids, right? Like for them to be able to read this book to their kids is going to be absolutely mind blowing. Like Daddy, when he was a little boy, used to fight dragons, and Grandpa was one of the dragons.
Well, you have this. I mean, I don't want to melt everything down to a cyclical nature, but your father got you into the comics, and now you put your kids into comics, and there's like a beautiful thing here where, I mean, I'm not smart enough to put it into words, but I mean, there's something here that I feel is a part of your pulse. Right, and in your artistic method, where it's like a celebration of the generation.
This is like what I was saying before when I said I knew comics were gonna be my life, but not necessarily my profession, right? Like, and this is the way that this is my life. It's just like playing with my kids, drawing a book to read to them, doing the dishes. Like, it's all
singing a song.
Yeah, singing a song while doing the dishes. I used to do this great. I haven't sung this one in a while, but when the kids are little, I would say, this is how Daddy washes the dishes. This is how Daddy washes the dishes. First he runs the water till the water it gets hotter. Then he gets that sponge all wet, puts a little soap on it. This is how Daddy washes the dishes. This is how Daddy washes the dishes. And then I go through like all the steps of washing the dishes in the song.
That one hasn't made it into a comic book.
No, and I never recorded that one either. I never put that one on an album or anything.
Yet.
You
know the guy from Nerf Herder, Perry Grip?
No.
He sings. Remember that band Nerf Herder? They had a bunch of like songs in the 90s. They're still around, but Perry.
I mean, I think I remember.
He now makes theme songs for like Disney, Nickelodeon, that kind of stuff. But he uses his YouTube channel to put out songs. And when I think about your music, I'm like, okay, if you take Perry Grip, They Might Be Giants, and Black Flag and put them in a blender, you get some of your stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's just felt like
sure. Throw a little Ween in there too.
Mm-hmm. We talked about Ween last week because we had Wheatus on the show, and we talked Weezer. So there was a lot of that section of.
See, my band is pretty old. Like, we probably predate Ween and are not long after They Might Be Giants. Like,
sure.
Well, for instance, my first band, Jazz in Hell, which really morphed into James Kochalka Superstar.
Did you keep?
We existed like that band existed before They Might Be Giants' first record came out.
Are you a fan of
for sure. Yeah.
So hearing it in your music, that's not a mistake.
No. It's fine. It's good. No, they're fantastic. I bought their. They came to Burlington, Vermont. So my freshman year at the University of Vermont, that was 1985, and they came up to play that fall of 1985, and all they had was a cassette tape, which I bought and listened to like 1,000 times. And interesting thing about that first cassette tape is songs from that cassette tape ended up on like the next like 10 albums or something.
Wow.
Like they just pull another one of their old songs and pump it up, and I might be exaggerating. Sure, maybe not 10, maybe it's 5 or whatever.
5, right.
But like they kept mining that first cassette tape for many years afterwards. A lot of good songs on that.
You got to imagine they're playing these things live and refining them, and then they're probably like, okay, now we're ready to put this thing
in a
higher format. But that's I think if you're in college and you're not appreciating the Might Be Giants in any form, then you're not really in college. I think that's just a part of being in college. It's like you got to discover several things in college, and They Might Be Giants is one of them. Even if
Well,
you're
I
a kid
think,
in
back then
2022.
in the 80s or 90s for sure, but now there's probably something else
Sure,
that we don't know.
it's probably something on
Oh,
the
like
TikTok or something.
like
We'll
100
never,
gex, 100 gex or something.
is that a thing?
Oh yeah, you don't know 100 gex?
I don't have college age kids. What is 100
100 gex might even have their crowd might be even younger than college age. I went to a 100 gex show. I thought I was seeing old people music like me.
What is that?
But it was like almost all like junior high school kids.
But that happens too with our music. Like I went to see Less Than Jake. We collaborated a bit with the kids in the Less Than Jake band, and I was like, oh, ska music's back. Like kids who weren't alive when ska had their late 90s thing are at these Less Than Jake shows and at these ska shows, and I'm like, well, wait, is this thing coming? What's happening?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what genre 100 gex is, but maybe it's hyper
How do you spell that?
If one like the number 100.
Yeah.
And then GECS.
I would have never gotten that. Oh my God, we're two old dudes talking about music. We're like, this is crazy. I am gonna look them up though. Geekscape, you may know what we're talking about and be like, yes, Jonathan, get with it.
Get with it, Jonathan.
Get with it. I don't care what you think of She-Hulk. Unsubscribe. We're done.
And there's probably something even newer that I don't know, but
we won't know. At this point, I'm just like, I'm done. Time out. Count me out. Like I've become that person who's like, yeah, my music taste stopped in the mid 2000s and just put dirt on me at this point as far as
well, I mean, I really actively search stuff out. There've been several times already that I've been to my son Eli, who's off at his university, and I've been like, hey, do you know this band? And he's like, no, I never heard of them. I'm like, well, they go to your university.
Holy crap.
And he was like, what? No, but they're like not famous. Like,
right.
But it's, I just try and keep up on everything. So like I've discovered multiple bands or singer-songwriter dudes or whatever at his school that he has never heard of.
But it makes you feel good though, right? It makes you feel good though, right?
Yeah.
And then when he finds them out, is he like, oh, those are the dorks at campus? Or
maybe.
does he like the stuff? I don't know. I mean, does he actually like...
Oh, no, he's definitely really into music, but I don't know 100% what...
that would be encouraging you, wouldn't it? He's like, I don't want to encourage you.
Well, okay. So there's this band called Darlingside, and they're excellent. They play... it's really like sort of soft, pretty music. There's like 4 guys and they play like mandolin and acoustic guitar, and they all stand around one mic and they sing in it together in beautiful harmonies. And anyhow, I had not heard of them, but they were coming through town and they emailed me and they were like, we're big fans of your comics and music. We'll put you on the guest list. I was like, okay. So I brought my wife, Amy, and we went to it. Like, this is great. And met the guys. And they were really nice. And the next day, I was talking to my son, Eli, about it. So this was a few years ago. So like he was like a sophomore in high school then. And I was like, what's it? He was like, what's that band you saw? And I was like, Darlingside. He's like, that's my favorite band. And I was like, well, if you had ever told me, you could have come to the show last night with us. So then the next time they came through town, we did bring him along, and
that's an amazing story.
Yeah, it's great. And now I've recorded a song with them. It's complete. I don't know when it's gonna come out, but we're gonna.
Are you showing off now? You're like, you're like showing off to your kid, be like, hey, not only
he's like, okay, take it easy, easy, Dad.
Hey, pump the brakes, Dad. Pump the brakes, boomer. Everybody born before 1990 is a boomer now, I guess.
All right, okay, you're my son's favorite band. We're collaborating.
Stay in your lane, kid. This will show you. That's fantastic. You
that kind of makes me feel like maybe I'm an asshole.
No, James. I think if anything, it's that punk rock attitude coming back out and being like, you know what? we're only on this planet for a handful. We don't know how long we're on the planet, but let's just do what we're going to do and let's celebrate. And if anything, I think that's really cool. And I think it's beautiful that you are in tune with your son in that way. And I keep going back to this observation with you and your generation before, your generation after, that you are in tune with them in a way that sometimes you're just not resonant like that with an adult or with a child. And you are, which is, I think, a testament to your style and the youthfulness of your style. Am I going too far with this? Am I just making shit out? Like, what do you think? I'm asking you to give yourself credit for this.
Oh yeah, thank you. I think no, I mean,
at least.
My older so my brothers are like 13 year, one's how old? 15 years older than me, 13 years older than me, and then my sister is 12 years older than me. Anyhow, my older brothers, so they were in college, and I was still pretty small, and they made me promise to never grow up. They're like, we're not growing up. You shouldn't grow up either. They're like, Dad never grew up. So we embraced a goofy goofiness.
And I don't want to call it, it's not Arrested Development, because you are clearly developing. You are having kids. You are having professions. You are moving on. What do they do that kept them from growing up? Or did they just take the bank job?
Oh, one of them started a business doing making post and beam houses, but stayed young at heart. And the other one really went crazy. I mean, not in a good way. No, in a good way. And moved to the jungles of Paraguay to catch spiders.
Whoa!
And has lived in Paraguay for like the last, since the early 80s. Since the early 80s, has lived in Paraguay.
That's incredible.
Catching spiders. Yeah.
I find the similar. I just wanted to be on the radio.
So he's a scientist. That's what he is. A scientist, not just a crazy person.
No, he's not out there eating them. He's out there like, hey, no. I imagined he was some kind of natural scientist. No, my younger brother.
I shouldn't throw that word crazy around. Some people consider it a slur. I just mean like wild.
Right. He took the bumpers off.
Yeah,
he doesn't stay within the parameters of normalcy for society, and I think that's right. I mean, my younger brother became a pro wrestler, and I became this. So, filmmaker, comic book guy who talks on the internet and a microphone. So I think none of us were like going to toe the line on that stuff. You know what I mean? And I don't know what that is an example of, but I think. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. Let's talk about your music, because you've got a song coming out.
Oh, yes. So the other song I was just telling you about, I sort of jumped the gun on that because we don't have a release date for that.
You don't have a release date, but it's recorded.
Yeah, the collaboration with Darling Side. But so the next one, the one that's on the burner, coming out September 16th, is called The Mummies on the Loose, and it's a collaboration with the punk band Rough Francis, and on guest vocals, Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys.
That's crazy.
It is. It's amazing. So the Dead Kennedys, Plastic Surgery Disasters, was one of the very first records that I bought. I found it in a record store in Boston for like $5, and I was like, $5? I gotta buy it no matter what.
Awesome. What's the record store, if I may ask?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, because they used to have that comic book store / record store.
Yeah. Newberry Comics.
Newberry Comics. I remember buying stuff at Newberry.
Yeah. I think we had gone down there to go to Newberry Comics, and I'm pretty sure I found this in a different store.
And now you're collaborating with Jello Biafra.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You pinch yourself with this stuff.
Yeah,
you have to.
And Rob Francis is freaking awesome too. they're a local band from Burlington, Vermont, and you may know their parents. Their parents were in the seminal proto-punk band Death that had that great documentary about them, a band called Death.
In Geekscape, if you haven't seen that documentary and you're into music, period, I think it's a great historical documentary, and it posits the question, like, were they the first punk band? Right?
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
Like if they're in Detroit,
not only maybe the first punk band, a black punk band,
totally black punk band, and they predate. Who would you say they predate? Iggy Pop? Who would you say is next?
They predate everybody.
They predate everybody. But who would say who would be the next one down the line? Is it?
I don't know. Maybe Iggy Pop.
And he's at least in the vicinity. Like he's a neighbor. I mean, if you're thinking of the Detroit, Chicago area, like, okay, Iggy Pop's there.
It's the same neighborhood, basically. Yeah.
But the band called Death is, I mean, when they were discovered a few years ago by that documentary, kind of really blew them up, right? Like that documentary came out and everybody started talking about this band, like where the hell were they hiding? And the documentary in itself is the question, where the hell did this band come from?
Yeah, and it's an amazing story from our perspective here in Burlington because, so Rough Francis is their sons, have a punk band too. And they had played in punk bands all through high school, and they didn't know their dads used to have this band. Their dads, when they were growing up, their dads had started a reggae band and would play reggae music, and they never ever told their kids that they used to have this like hard rocking band.
It was very influential in that area, and you can theorize whether or not they went and led to Iggy Pop and the rest of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so eventually, like one of the kids had moved to San Francisco, and his roommate went to a party, and at the party heard this song that was awesome, came back home and said to my friend, you got to hear this song I just heard at this party, and played it for him. And he was like, that sounds a lot like my dad. I mean, all the stuff is covered in the documentary, I think. But yeah, so then he went home back to Vermont, said, Dad, are you in this band called Death? And he's like, yeah, I got, a whole album up in the attic. We never released it.
And they busted out. And
they busted out, yeah.
What's it like working with those? I mean, ultimately, if their parents had put their kids in a comic book, I think it would have been, they would have known that. That's right. That's what I mean. You're putting your kids in a comic book. If they would have just had the kids doing background vocals, just like, I think the kids weren't even born yet when they were doing it. How old are those guys?
No, they weren't. No, it was all before. When they were in Death, they were like teens. Yeah. So the kids were decades out still.
And where can we find this song? This one that comes out on
the Mummies on the Loose. The Mummies on the you'll be Spotify, Tidal, anywhere you want to listen to it.
Okay. All right. So that's September 13th. And Geekscape is
September 16th.
Okay. September 16th. Here's your mission. Okay. September 16th. You're gonna go and you're gonna find James's music. This mummy song. What's it called again?
The Mummies on the Loose.
The Mummies on the Loose. And are they going to search for James Kochalka, or do you have your own name for this super group?
James Kochalka Superstar. I think it says something like James Kochalka Superstar with Rough Francis featuring Jello Biafra, but I'm sure you could find it just by searching James Kochalka Superstar.
Okay. And then 4 days later, you're going to find this comic.
And then my new book. 4 days later, my new book, Dragon Puncher Punches Back.
Big difference between IDW and Top Shelf, because you've been with Top Shelf for a long time.
I've been with Top Shelf from the very first thing they ever published. The very first book was an anthology, and I was in it, and I've been loyally bound ever since. So, when IDW bought Top Shelf, I was a little worried. Didn't know what was going to happen. The very first thing they did was I had a whole bunch of Johnny Boo books that had fallen out of print, and Top Shelf couldn't afford to keep them in print. And IDW put them all back into print. And I was like, awesome. This is like the best thing that could happen. And they've been freaking great ever since. We've been putting together TV pitches and shopping them around. Things have been going really well. I don't want to say any more than that.
Well, James, when that stuff moves forward, just come back on the show and tell the Geekscapes about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll know, and then we'll tell your son about it.
Yeah.
Long after it's that. No kidding. Be like, put that thing on TV.
It's hard to get too excited about anything, because these things fall apart all the time. Like poor Jeff Smith, who had like,
oh my God,
4 of the biggest deals in a row all fall apart.
The Nickelodeon thing, and then most recently the Netflix one.
Yeah, and I think there was another one too. Yeah,
the Bone
awful.
And
awful.
So he makes Razzle. I think in Geekscape, you got to be familiar with Jeff Smith and Bone. I think Bone is like the Lord of the Rings of
the best comic.
I love it. It's fantastic, and it goes places. And I liked Razzle, and I like the stuff that he does.
It's all great.
How has he not made Bone into a cartoon, a series? How is this not like?
It's easy to get
talking about Bone like this Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's easy to get as a fan. It's easy to get frustrated, but the book still exists.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't get turned into a Netflix show. It's still an amazing, amazing graphic novel. But it must be incredibly frustrating for him, beyond belief.
And IDW does a great job of this stuff. I know that they're homes to the Eastman and Laird stuff with the Ninja Turtles, but also they brought back this Rocketeer book. They have this mini series for the Rocketeer that I've been reading. It's new stories, but it also has a celebration in the back of all. It has a oral history of the Rocketeer that I thought was really great to read, and they did an incredible reprint of the Rocketeer stuff.
Cool.
So
I never really.
I feel like they're doing things right.
I never read Rocketeer, but they, it's been on my radar.
Well, now you share, you share homes with them, because IDW does a pretty damn good job of taking these books that are out of print, like you said, the Johnny Boo stuff, and putting them out for fans in a great way. And are they doing the same stuff with the earlier Dragon Puncher stuff? Because if you're a Dragon Puncher fan and you get this Dragon Puncher punches back, you're like, okay, I want to go get the.
I hope the others are still in print. Sometimes we forget. It does slip. It does slip through the cracks sometimes. There was we were heading into the Christmas season a few years back. And my local store called me, and they're like, we can't get the Johnny Boo books. I'm like, what do you mean you can't get the Johnny Boo books? I'm like, well, the distributor says they're out of print. I'm like, they're not out of print. And I called Top Shelf, and they're like, no, they're not out of print. And then they called IDW, and then by the end of the day, we're like, oh my God, they're all out of print.
Whoa.
They just all sold out in the months heading up to Christmas, and then suddenly it was like October, and when everything really gets cooking, and they were all gone. And so,
did you miss that Christmas?
Yeah, we missed that one Christmas.
Damn!
Yeah.
All right, that's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Geekscape you can pick up this book September 20th. Plenty of time for Christmas.
That's right.
Plenty of time for Christmas. You got a couple of months there. You get some time. And again, this is James Kochalka, who I think came out of that zine culture, the punk rock culture, and makes a pretty punk rock book. And like other punk rockers, has grown up with it and put his kids and stuff, and made books for kids as well. But you're going to make some adult books again too, right? Like, this isn't all kids all the time now.
No,
right?
No.
I'm not going to ask you what you're working on. No spoilers.
No, I can tell you what I'm working on, because I'm serializing it on my Patreon. So I had a lot of ideas for books, and I had a lot of really good ideas, and I was getting a little confused. I couldn't choose from all my great ideas, and also getting a little overwhelmed. Some of them seemed like they would just be too much work. And, like, not just that they would be too much work, but like the thought of taking on this great idea was just overwhelming. It's something a little bit like writer's block or something, but it's a little different.
Did it break
Sometimes
it up?
yeah, well, okay, so this is what I came up with instead. I looked at all my ideas and I was like, I'm going to pick the worst one. And so my idea that I picked was Jimmy's Elbow, a story about a boy who has an elbow. And that's what I'm serializing on my Patreon right now. It's almost daily, but like almost a page a day. And it's getting really crazy. That is one wild elbow.
You're not.
No.
I'm mapped out. This is like you wake up and you're like, "What's this next page?"
Making it up as I go along, and it's fantastic.
That's got to be an incredible exercise, if anything. If anything, it's at least an incredible exercise in saying like, "Hey, trust yourself. You're gonna stick the landing, maybe, or at least get in the
yeah. So when I started, I was like, well, this is nothing, so I'll do 20 pages.
Yeah, no risk.
Just do 20 pages, and then I'll move on to the next thing. And I got 20 pages in, and I was having a lot of fun, so I just kept going, and I just posted page 101 today. So
you're out of control.
Out of control.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. I think that's great. That's like anti-writer's block. You've grown up like you kind of said like, hey, screw it, let's go, let's rock and roll.
Yeah, so that's the secret. The secret to getting over writer's block is just don't give a shit.
Yeah, just stop giving a shit. I tell myself with a draft, I say like, I literally like when I look at a scene and I kind of go, like the horse up against a cliff, like doesn't want to go forward. I say, no, you got to jump. Like, just jump. Right? What is the dumbest thing you can put on this page? Like, and so I call my first one or two drafts. I'll probably be working on one right after this episode because you've inspired me, James. And I'm writing about a cartoonist too at the moment. So some of the things you said, I'm like, oh, cool. Those weave in. I sometimes ask myself with writer's block, I say, what is the dumbest thing you can put right here? Like, how would like Scooby-Doo do this? Like, what is the most simple way to do this? Just to put the mechanic down, just to put the beat down, and then you can make it better later, because that's what rewrites are for. I don't have a Patreon that I'm doing a daily thing on. It's like I can rewrite it, but yeah, I think I haven't had writer's block in years, just because I tell myself like, hey, we're all gonna be dirt one day. Just go crazy. Just write something silly, and loud and fun. And if you need to beef it up, if you get collaborators who want a little more out of this, then they can pay you to do that, or you can collaborate and make it work for everybody. But ultimately, that first draft is mine, and it's probably pretty unreadably silly, which is great.
I had this painting professor in graduate school, this guy Archie Rand, and he said, okay, so like if you take a risk in real life, like you jump off a cliff, you're gonna like mangle your legs or hit your head or something, you're gonna destroy yourself, you're gonna die. You take a risk in your art, nothing's gonna happen to you. What are you scared of?
Mm-hmm. You might make Morbius. I'm kidding.
Geekscape right. No.
2 months ago, we had the Morbius writers on the show. And they're great guys. So don't worry about that. Make Morbius. Who gives a shit?
And I thought he was right for a long time until then when I was drawing autobiographical comics, I realized, no, you can really mess up your actual life.
Yeah. The dirty
you like piss off a friend or,
Yeah, the dirty laundry stuff is something that I thought about in college when I was getting into filmmaking, because everybody's a documentarian early on, and sometimes with this very show, it's turned into the Truman Show for me, because it's literally been 15, 16 years of my life, and it's weekly, and I talk about things, and you do have to put those brakes on and say, well, it's not all for them. Some of this stuff you do have to put a little bit up. I'm not going to live stream my wedding in a week, in a month.
Right. Yeah. Because no, that would be a terrible idea.
Be a terrible idea. And
people do that kind of thing all the time. It's almost
It-
like it's almost become a national sickness.
and it's not
Um,
special anymore.
yeah,
It
or
took me
you know,
forever to make a TikTok.
like TikTok. Yeah,
I put old Geekscape on TikTok. You know what I'm putting on TikTok? I'm putting me interviewing like people from Comic-Con 2007 that like, I'm just like bringing little clips of snippets of me talking to Robert England and Tony Todd or me talking to Grant Morrison. I'm throwing those snippets up on TikTok with like a list of what I'm reading in comics that week. And that's
and
fun,
it's a, I said national
but
sickness. It's a worldwide sickness.
I think
I
it's a
mean, like,
global
yeah,
sickness. It's want to
it's a
be
global
celebrity
sickness,
stuff.
and when I say it's a global sickness, I'm not really being preachy. I'm not immune to this at all. I'm sucked in
Yeah,
just like everybody else.
yeah. The Patreon thing is something I not want to do with Geekscape just because I have trepidation about being able to feed that stuff. It takes a lot of metabolism to keep it fed, and that scares me. But also the TikTok thing I was resistant to for a long time out of not wanting that worm in my brain that I have to feed it, right? I get scared when I want to feed these things because you do feel it when you're sitting in, first thing you do wake up in the morning is you want to get on the hell carousel of like check Facebook, check Twitter, check Instagram, check TikTok, check your email, and then enough time's gone by and checking those four things that you go back in the next circle
Oh
of the
yeah,
hell
yeah, yeah.
carousel, and now you're in the carousel of hell for the next 30 minutes, and you realize you haven't done anything. You've
Oh,
neither.
it can go a lot longer than 30 minutes.
So I don't want. So like
Yeah.
I've been hesitant to feed that stuff
Yeah.
in long form conversation, for good or bad. Like that's kind of what I like to do is get to know people and do things.
I didn't have a cell phone, and a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, time goes by so fast.
I know.
So it was probably like a year before the pandemic or something like that. Anyhow, my wife said, "You want a cell phone for your birthday?" And I said, "No." And she got me one. And
well, I'm sorry, but in case of emergency, I want you to have
yes,
it. What I was
yeah.
trying to say
Of course,
was I want you to have a cell
yeah,
phone
yeah.
in case of
Of course,
emergency,
of
but I was
course,
making it sound like an idea that might have been yours. She
yeah. I
wanted you to have a
mean,
cell phone.
she knew I wanted one, but I
Okay.
also knew it wasn't going to be good for me. And I'm obsessed with the phone as anybody.
I feel the brain worms. I feel these little
Yeah.
worms, like freaking that Khan put in Chekhov and fucking Wrath of Khan. I just feel this little worm in my head being like, just check me, turn me on. I
So
might have an update.
the thing, so after I had my phone for like a year or so, I suddenly realized its absolute perfect use, which is so my whole life I've write songs all the time. I write songs every day, and I forget them as fast as I write them. Now I can just whip out my phone anytime I've got a little song. I just sing it into the phone, put it back in my pocket, can continue on the day. And I had been starting during the pandemic texting the songs to this other friend of mine, and he was actually cataloging them all and helping me choose collaborators. So that's how we did the.
That's great.
He helped. Anyhow, he helped with he's helping with these collaborations that I've been doing. But anyhow, since the pandemic started, I've written. Well, let me check my phone.
And I'll do the same thing. I will email myself.
Since the pandemic has started, I have written 1,237 songs.
That's a lot of dishes, James.
Yeah. And about a little less than a year ago, I started posting them all on my Patreon. So I have like 580 something songs on my Patreon, all brand new songs. A lot of them are a cappella. A lot are just me playing the piano and singing. And then now I gotta like start choosing which songs to make big, full
production value.
Yeah, add production value. Right.
That's your version of the Might Be Giants tape.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's like the old dial-a-song.
Their little 4-track stuff that they put onto a cassette tape to go to the colleges and have something to sell. You're doing
or they used to do this thing dial-a-song where you could call their phone number and they would have an answer machine and they put new songs on there every day.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I did not know about that, but that's pretty cool. Well, James, let's let you go. Let me let you get back to
Okay.
your
Yeah.
work.
Sorry.
No, James, this has been awesome.
I just felt like there was a point, like maybe 20 minutes ago, where I could tell you were starting to wrap up, and we've talked a lot since then.
Listen, Geekscape is too bad. I'm the boss. I'm the boss here. I'm the boss here. And if you wanted to, listen, you could have turned your damn phone off anytime you wanted before this. You could have turned it off. Listen, if you're watching on Facebook, Twitch, or where else are we on? We're on YouTube. You could have turned this off a long time ago. But too bad. I'm the boss. I get to keep talking. If you like to talk,
talked about a lot of good stuff.
I just like getting to know you, and that's what I realized. Like I admitted this to Matt Kelly. I said, I know I'm doing a lot of Geekscapes. I'm trying to get a bunch up before the wedding because I think I'm going to have a lull here. But I got to talk to like Neil Abute. I get to talk to Jeff Fahey. I get to talk to actors. I get to talk to Kim Coates was great. Like I get to talk to a lot of people, and I just want to meet. I just like storytellers. I just like meeting people and talking process.
Get to talk about stories and art.
I don't care if nobody listens.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to offend people watching this or listening to this, but I really don't care if anybody listens. I just need to talk to other creators because it can be such a solitary thing to sit and write all day, or you know what I mean? Like I don't get to really hang with other creators unless I get something to go shoot or film to go make. Otherwise, I'm just sitting here writing my stupid ideas that have no resonance to anything until you throw them against the wall and other people.
That's why I like doing these the collaborations.
Incredible.
Gives you
a
way to bond with some cool people, and
ultimately why we built this Geekscape network was to have not just this show, but the other 29 plus shows that we have on the network that are all about movies or comics or video games or filmmaking or music. We got all sorts of stuff. Maybe you should be on our music show. There's all sorts of things you could be on.
Yeah, I should. I got to tell you one more little detail about that song, "The Mummy's on the Loose." Okay. I actually wrote the song in 1985, but we never recorded it as like a real recording until this year.
What'd you record it on then? You didn't have a cell phone. What'd you put it on? A little?
No, I wrote the song in 1985. We recorded like a version on like, cassette tape. Not even 4-track. Just like literally playing it.
Yeah.
Live. Mm-hmm. We used to perform on the radio a lot. I think we have an old recording of us playing it live on the radio. But so that was with the old band that did the Casio keyboard and stuff. So it was this was just Casio keyboard and me singing. The old version was, but now it's a big rock song.
Can't wait
oh my God, it's amazing.
So it was a Jazz in Hell original.
Yep.
And now it's
James Kochalka Superstar with Ruff Francis featuring Jello Biafra.
What the hell, man? Well, a good idea never dies, Geekscapists. You just gotta wait for its moment. That is September 16th.
That's 30 years.
30 freaking years. That's great. That's great. Well, Hollywood makes you remakes of things from 30 years ago, so why not you?
Yeah.
The dates are September 16th for the song. You're gonna look for that on Spotify. And September 20th for this new book, Dragon Puncher Punches Back. It's in bookstores, and if you got kids and you're trying to like figure out what you want to get them for Christmas, Hanukkah, any of the gift giving season, this is a good one.
They will love it. They will.
And it's a celebration of family. Like I think it's beautiful that you're putting your kids in your books. I think it's really awesome. All right, James, where's the best place for people to find you? Your website?
Oh, do I have a website?
Yes, you do.
I don't think I really do. There is that, I guess Twitter or Instagram. Okay. It's probably the best. Yeah.
We'll search you on Twitter and Instagram. I'm going to go follow you on Instagram right now. I think I follow you on Twitter. If not, we're going to fix that. And you have a new home here at Geekscape. Anything you want to do here on Geekscape, promote on any of the shows, come and do it.
Yeah, sounds great.
It's fun. Love you, buddy. And if you need anything, here we are. Geekscapists, share this with your friends. Subscribe. You know how to do it. Find us on social media.
Thanks for the beautiful conversation.
Dude, love you, man. And as we say here on Geekscape, as we go out, don't hate, create. It's the same amount of energy, but you're putting it in a better direction. You know how it goes. Peace.